Hi everybody, this is David Looney. I am the instructor for Introduction to the Gospels, and in this video I want to just cover the syllabus, hopefully preempt some questions. There's always questions about the syllabus, but hopefully I can give you a general idea. Let's start off by describing my contact info. You've got my cell phone. Feel free to call me. I will be doing traveling out of the country. So this might not be the best way to get a hold of me as far as calling goes. Even if I'm halfway around the world, you can text me. Receiving a text doesn't cost me any money. That's a great way. So if you email me and you haven't heard back from me, shoot me a text, and that way I know that something's up and I'll get a hold of you. So don't hesitate to text me. I just won't be able to text you or call you back because it costs me a lot of money. Of course, there's always email that goes straight to my phone, but I won't have data when I'm roaming around, so not as reliable as texting, or not as immediate. Probably the best way, I would say, is if you have a question, send me a text, let me know you want to get a hold of me, and then we Skype. We can Skype or use Messenger, Microsoft Messenger. Either way, the beautiful thing about those venues is it allows me to share my monitors with you, and so if we're looking at the Bible or an assignment, you can show me on your screen what you're looking at, and vice versa. And so it makes it really easy. It's almost like I'm standing there. We're in the same room. So I would really appreciate if you would spare me having to write you long emails. And if you just shoot me a text and say, hey, can we Skype sometime today, and we can set an appointment like that. In fact, I know some of you might not be into Skyping or think it's kind of awkward, but one of your first assignments is to get to Skype me, and I think it's that important that if you've never done it before, I just want you to Skype me, and we can talk face to face for just a few minutes. We can get to know each other, and maybe you can get over the awkwardness in that initial meeting. Let's talk about the course description. This course is Introduction to the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's an exam. We're going to examine each of the Gospels on its own as a narrative work. At Horizon, this course, this semester, we're studying the life of Christ and the Gospels. Now, they might seem really similar, but they actually are very, very different. The Gospels, we're going to be looking at each of the Gospels on its own as a story. And so we're going to be looking at how the author tells his story, what his point is, and the different narrative elements within that gospel. It's very different from the life of Christ. Now, in that class, you'll be just doing something completely different, which is reconstructing what the historical Jesus actually did. Now, that might seem very similar because the Gospels are about the life of Christ, but they're actually completely different things that you're doing there, practices, I'm sorry. So, anyway, hopefully that explains why we've got a Life of Christ and a Gospels class at the same time. They are completely different courses. In this course, what we're going to do is look at the genre of historical narrative. The Gospels are historical narratives, and so we're going to study what exactly it means that they're historical narratives. And we're going to look at the historical, cultural, and religious settings of the Gospels. So we're going to look at the time that the Gospels were written in, and in the events. The times in which the events occurred, so we can understand the history and how it's relevant. The real emphasis, though, is going to be on a narrative analysis of each of the Gospels. I'm going to explain that further down a little bit, but essentially the idea is we're really going to want to study the Gospels as a story. When the Gospel writers sat down to write the life of Christ, they had a lot of material to choose from, and they selected the material that really made their point. And they told it in a way that really emphasized what they wanted to emphasize so that their point came across the way they wanted it to. We're going to be studying how exactly the authors chose to write the life of Christ in the way they did, and why. that's really the goal of our assignment. And what that's going to let us know is, why did Matthew write Matthew or Mark write Mark? What was their purpose? What were they trying to teach us? And by the end of this course, you should know the differences between Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and how the authors communicated. In fact, that's one of the elements. Is by the end of this course, you should be able to look at each of the Gospels and say, okay, you should be able to discuss the plot development, the character types, and the character development, the different themes present through each of the Gospels, the specific conflict in the Gospels. A lot of times we think of the conflict in the Gospels as Jesus trying to save the world, and we look at it very simplistic, but it's a little more nuanced than that. And so by the end of this course, you should be able to really carefully identify the conflict of each of the Gospels. The authors, you'll learn that we can look at the author from different perspectives, as the intended author, as the real author, or the narrator. And so you should be able to understand the differences between the authors in that sense. And finally, the implied reader. Again, you'll understand those elements later. By the end of this course, you'll be able to describe the relevant historical, cultural, and religious context of the Gospels. So basically, you should know the history in which the Gospels were written and the history in which the events that occurred. And finally, the students will be able to you'll be able to correctly employ a horizontal reading of the Gospel in a way that illuminates his or her vertical understanding. Your vertical understanding of the Gospels. It's going to take all of chapter 3 of your textbook to explain what I mean by this. So I'm going to skip that for now. It's okay if you don't understand it. By the end of this week, you should know what that means. And if you don't understand by the end of this week, then we gotta talk. You've got 3 required texts. The first one is Mark Strauss's 4 Portraits, One Jesus. It's a very beautiful book. Now, it might look intimidating. We're actually not reading the entire book. Half of it is about the Gospels. The other half is about the life of Christ. And so you're not going to need to read the whole thing. To make you feel a little better, there's lots of pretty pictures. College students like that. There's like little cutouts. And it's just a pretty book, really easy to read. Mark Strauss is probably my favorite teacher in the whole wide world. And I think he wrote the perfect book on the Gospels. So I'm not going to try and reinvent the wheel here. It's a really good book. Beyond that, you need one formal translation, something like the NASB, ESV, or King James. If you do not know what a formal translation is, then you gotta. I've got videos on my website as to what formal and functional translations are. So you're gonna need something like the NASB, ESV, or King James, as well as a functional translation. I highly recommend the NLT as far as functional translation goes. By the way, I have a resource site at davidlooney.info with videos and stuff like that might be helpful. Great. Let's talk about submitting assignments. Of course, you know that you're submitting assignments on Moodle. I'm going to ask you that if you have a PC, I'm not as uptight as how you send me those documents. But if you don't have Microsoft Word, or if you're on Mac, do not send me pages. I'm not a Mac guy. Actually, I plan on buying a Mac here pretty soon, but I'm not gonna be running Mac or an Apple software on there. So don't send me pages. I won't be able to open it. You need to send me something that I can open up in Word. That's your responsibility to do that. I know you can do it with a Mac, so it shouldn't be a problem. Last thing I ask is, when you submit an assignment, you name the file, your full name, and the assignment title. So for example,